All right, before we get to Dr. McCullough, I'm going to play this clip because it's what RFK Jr. did today on his removal of some folks in the Biden CDC. Watch.
A massive change by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. removing all members of the CDC's Vaccine Advisory Committee, which makes recommendations on the safety and efficacy of vaccines. Members getting a notice saying this email serves as formal notice of your immediate termination. Kennedy releasing a statement saying, "Today we are prioritizing the restoration of public trust above any specific pro or anti-vaccine agenda." Kennedy argues a clean sweep is needed to restore public trust, claiming the committee had conflicts of interest, adding the Biden administration appointed all 17 current members, with 13 of them last year. But critics have called this change dangerous and partisan.
Is it partisan, Dr. McCullough? Welcome to the show.
No, it has nothing to do with the right or the left. It has to do with exactly what RFK is saying, restoring public trust. This committee became a vaccine rubber stamp committee. The members had connections to the vaccine manufacturers. One of the worst examples is former member Dr. Paul Offit. He is a patent holder on the rotavirus vaccine, and he was on the committee that helped usher in this vaccine for all children. Can you imagine the conflicts of interest? They weren't kept in check. The committee was rife with corruption. You know, it is a federal committee. It operates under a charter. There's 29 liaison organizations, including the AMA, as well as the American Academy of Pediatrics. So it needs to be restructured, but this is the right step.
Let me show you what the Wellness Company posted. You may have heard that company before. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. unveiled 8 people he has chosen to serve on the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's Vaccine Advisory Panel, just 2 days after taking the unprecedented step of removing all 17 sitting members. I know we talked about this. I like what he said here. RFK names new slate of vaccine advisors. All of these individuals are committed to evidence-based medicine, gold standard science, and common sense, Kennedy said in a post on X. Is he still running into pushback from the medical community on some of this when it comes to vaccines?
Oh, for sure. There's been major papers in the mainstream medical literature, JAMA, New England Journal of Medicine, lamenting the firing of all these individuals, saying that, people's health is being put at risk. Now, Kennedy will need to beef up the panel with doctors who see patients, who are experienced, pediatricians, those who've published extensively on, vaccines, particularly vaccine safety. We don't want to see another rubber stamp committee. It's not one size fits all. I hope the new committee takes a risk stratified approach and we start to lessen the burden of vaccines for children.
All right, here's a clip of RFK Jr. talking about truth over pharma. Watch.
In 1986, there were 11 vaccines on the schedule. Today, a compliant child must take between 69 and 92 vaccines to stay in school in some states. And not one of them has been safety tested in a pre-licensing placebo-controlled trial. And that is just malpractice. So the people who were in charge of that are now gone. And we're going to bring people onto the ACIP panel, not anti-vaxxers. We're bringing people on who are credentialed scientists, who are highly credentialed physicians, who are going to do evidence-based medicine, who are going to be objective, and who are going to follow the science and make critical public health determinations for our children.
Okay, so Doc, on this seems to be like common sense, but I had no idea we were up to 69 to 92 vaccine. How did that happen?
The committee kept rubber stamping their addition to the schedule, Gene. And so, if I'm a cardiologist, if I prescribed 16 drugs to a patient all at once, chances are there's going to be a side effect. And that's where we are now. Around age 1, children actually get 16 different vaccines, or they're in combination products. the complication risks and rates are too high. The vaccines have never been tested in combination with other vaccines. As a general principle, fewer vaccines given later in life, not in combination, much safer.
It's just, I don't think any of us realized this until the COVID disaster, when we saw what happened, and suddenly we're seeing, because, you know, most Americans, Doc, we trusted the CDC. We felt like they knew better. I mean, after all, they're the CDC. They knew what to do if you got poisoned, all that. It's just shocking that we're sitting at this place and felt like we must have been asleep at the wheel for several years.
Yeah, I was as a doctor. You know, the vaccines kind of crept up on I took all the vaccines. My kids took all the vaccines. But when the COVID shots ran out, were rolled out, we started to see what was happening. It opened up our eyes. And, you know, there probably are a whole array of childhood conditions related to excessive vaccination, at least a risk factor. And that includes asthma, other allergic diseases, neuropsychiatric disorders, even sudden infant death syndrome. All of this has to be investigated now.
All right, so before I go any further, I want people, because we talk about this every time you're on, and there's always such a huge response, because there are people that have taken the vaccine, the COVID vax, and they go, oh no, I feel I shouldn't have taken it. What do I do? Walk them again through the process and what they should take to get rid of that and reverse the effects of it.
At Wellness Company, we've made it simple now, Gene. We've combined the critical detoxification components into a single product. It's called Ultimate Spike Detox. Ultimate Spike Detox from the Wellness Company. The nominal dose is 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. We now have multiple peer-reviewed papers. I have thousands of patients under direct observation. It takes a while, probably a year or more, but patients do get restored to health.
Yeah, and how do they get that? They go to twc.health, and code FLASH gives them a discount. And this will help, just like basically scour everything out of there? Is that what it does?
Right. The vaccine installs the dangerous spike protein. So does the infection. The spike protein, Gene, is a little spine on the surface of the virus. Let me show you to you. This little spine, it gets stuck in the body after the infection, and the vaccines load a ton of it in the body. And we can't get rid of it. It's found in all the tissues, the bloodstream. So the Ultimate Spike Detox helps degrade the spike protein, dissolve it, so the human body can get rid of it. The spike protein is causing all the symptoms of long COVID and the vaccine problems like blood clots.
All right. So, you know, from the very beginning, we said on this program, we're not telling you whether to get a vaccine or not to get a vaccine. The problem we had was with the government telling you had to get a vaccine, or these mandates saying you had to wear a mask or you couldn't. Anyway, you know that, but I just want to go back on the record. That's that. Let's move on to dyes. TWC.health is a great company. A lot of great stuff where you can do that. But let me show you what's going on with some of the changes. Look at this. Fox News reports about Make America Health Again. Some changes coming. Watch.
General Mills, they're removing artificial food dyes from U.S. cereals and the foods that they send to our schools, K through 12 schools. That's going to happen by next summer. This is going to happen by the end of 2027. They're removing all artificial dyes completely by the end, like I said, it's 2027. They make Trick cereal, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cheerios, Rice Chex, the things that are probably in your pantry. Also, Kraft and Heinz, they're saying goodbye to the artificial dyes by the end of 2027. Includes Jell-O, Capri Suns, Kool-Aid, and Crystal Light. Then the In-N-Out Burger, they removed artificial dyes from strawberry shakes and pink lemonade, and they replaced it with the beet juice and turmeric instead. Their focus is on the red 40 and the yellow 5. Also, the high fructose corn syrup, they're replacing that with natural sugar. Then let's take Steak and Shake. Instead, they're using the beef tallow fat. We've heard RFK Jr. talk a lot about this. Instead of the vegetable oils to make their French fries, their onion rings, and their chicken tenders. And the tallow fat, it's still unsaturated, but it is a lot healthier than the heavily processed seed oils. Then all the spices in your cabinets, McCormick, many of those in my cabinet are made by this brand, working to remove artificial food dyes and sodiums. Their focus is on the red dye number 3, which has been linked to.
Okay, so, Doc, I mean, this is wonderful that we see everybody getting on board. Why did it take so long? Why haven't we done this before? Did these companies just not know? Or was it to their advantage to keep it? I mean, I know that's the million-dollar question, really a million-dollar question. You know, surely this is not the first time these companies knew that there was an issue.
You know, just like there's big pharma, Gene, there's what we call big food. I mean, this is a big business. It's a big industry. The FDA has been working on this. The company's been working on this, but they've been slow-walking this, slow-walking it. And RFK has accelerated it now. We're largely talking about red and yellow dyes. They've been linked to cancers in animals. That's not good. And in clinical studies, they're linked to hyperactivity in children. So you never want your kids eating Skittles or Twix or, you know, Starburst or any of these, you know, brightly colored products. Now they're going to be taken off the market. It's interesting. I liked her report. You know, beetroot, which is going to replace the red dye, that's very healthy. It's very healthy for the heart. And turmeric or curcumin is very healthy for the joints. So believe it or not, we're going to replace these toxic dyes with very healthy micronutrients.
And I guess, you know, I'm thankful that we're at this place. I just like, why did it take everybody so long? You know, maybe we just needed the right guy in the right position. Elections do have consequences, and this is one of them that no one would think about. But look, getting the right guy in as president makes a difference in your health. Who'd have thought it? Let me show you this. Walmart, Reuters shows Walmart Sam's Club to remove synthetic dyes from their private brand by year end. I mean, this is another step in the right direction. What, without going back and digging up COVID all over again, what is your concern going forward, Dr. McCullough? You know, with everything that we see, what is the #1 concern that you see for Americans right now?
The COVID vaccines are still on the market, Gene, and, you know, through Trump, RFK, the FDA commissioner, they haven't had the willpower to pull these. They need to be pulled off the market. We've still had several hundred Americans die this year of freshly administered COVID-19 vaccines. They're not safe, they're not effective, and they need to be pulled off the market.
Is Big Pharma that powerful that they can keep a drug on the market that is obviously hurting the majority of Americans? I mean, this is a really sad state in America to have something this horrible on the market and in some states forcing it on you.
Well, fortunately, in Texas, you know, where you and I are, they're so dangerous. The mandates had to be banned. Think about this. I mean, you know, so employers couldn't force them on people. Fortunately, very few people are taking them. Our FDA is still out of touch. They published guidance where 31% of adults should be taking COVID shots. It's not even 15% are. And it's going away. You know, either Trump, RFK, or the FDA commissioner, they need to make a hard call and pull them off the market. Big Pharma is very powerful. You know, not a single country now has had enough courage to pull these off the market.
And that's a real tragedy. That is the real tragedy of it all. Let me show you this post. A big step forward today for the NIH. We've issued a guide notice implementing President Donald Trump's executive order ending U.S. support for dangerous gain-of-function research. No scientific project is worth the risk of causing a pandemic. Now, here's my question. This is good news. Gain-of-function research, we know from Anthony Fauci, you know, the common layman has learned more in the last few years about gain-of-function research than we ever wanted to know. But in spite of that, is there ever a good time for first off, is there ever a good time for gain-of-function research? Do we ever really need that?
I don't think we do. The theory is to get ahead of nature. We haven't proved that we can actually do that. In fact, these labs create things that are far more dangerous that come out of nature. Multiple leaks have occurred over time. Now, I read the NIH statement very carefully. It matches Trump's January 2025 executive order perfectly, which is a very well-written order. So not only is federal funding going to be pulled, but the government's asking the academic institutions now to do an inventory of all their research and report to the federal authorities where these dangerous pathogens, bacteria, fungi, and viruses, as well as toxins, are being produced. It doesn't stop non-government funded activities, like say from the Gates Foundation or Rockefeller Foundation's Wellcome Trust. So gain-of-function research can still be done, but the U.S. government is going to heavily curtail it and certainly not going to fund it.
All right, let me show you this graph here. This is about lab leaks each year, laboratory-acquired infections and pathogens. Escapes worldwide between 2000 and 2021. The Lancet posted this scoping review. Look at all of I mean, Dr. McCullough, I'm not sure if you can see all that we're looking at here. This is staggering, the amount of viruses and pathogens that have escaped. Seems to me there must be somewhere, there has to be some guidelines, but is everybody not following the guidelines here? How are we seeing so many pathogens escaping and viruses escaping? It seems to be a bit bizarre.
Yeah, this report was filed by Nicholas Hulscher, the epidemiologist at the McCullough Foundation. And, you know, this study that was published in, major journal, these were when various pathogens or viruses, bacteria, fungi leaked out of labs and got people sick. These aren't just, breaches in safety. That's where someone got sick. Now, fortunately, it didn't spread. It could have been a broken test tube or an animal that got out of its cage. The Biden administration last May, about a year ago, posted very weak guidance where it's all, self-policing, self-reporting. I think we need to have something like the Atomic Energy Commission, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, come in and actually have strict regulation on who's going to handle these viruses. Right now, it's wide open, it's dangerous, and the public is at risk.
The public is at risk, but here in America, Nicholas Hulscher here, it says the study identified 309 confirmed lab-acquired infections since 2001. But here's the point. Nearly 79% occurred in the United States.
Right.
Right. That's crazy.
Gene, there's a big operation at University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston. Galveston is not a particularly safe place to be when it comes to these laboratory-created monsters. This has got to be shut down. I hope that the next steps are taken. So not only just pulling funding, but strict regulation and safety measures put in place. And we have to watch the Chinese or others coming in and funding programs in the United States. I don't think we should let it happen.
I think all of America agrees with you on that one. All right, as we start to wrap up here with this segment, I'm still shocked at all I hear pushback on ivermectin. Is there anything new that we've heard that would cause anybody any concern about taking ivermectin, or any new research about its benefits?
It's safer than Tylenol. I use it now in my practice routinely. We found it to be very useful with treating SARS-CoV-2. Now there's emerging mechanistic data that it may have an anti-cancer effect. So it's working its way into some supplemental anti-cancer protocols. And some people just, use it off label. What I do is I check to make sure that, it doesn't conflict with any of the other standard cancer drugs, make sure there's no evidence of liver dysfunction. The only concern I would have is in someone with, some type of brain disorder or metastases to the brain and lowering the seizure threshold. But otherwise, ivermectin, very safe. And, we should find new applications for dynamic drugs. And this has been a bright spot in the pandemic.
What about mebendazole? I'm seeing that everywhere as well. Explain to me how that helps.
That's anti-parasitic like ivermectin, but in a different way. In fact, the wellness company combines both of them, ivermectin and mebendazole, in a fixed dose to treat what's considered neglected parasitic infections. The CDC classifies them various hookworms, pinworms, giardia, and other parasitic infections. But with mebendazole for off-label use, it actually has clinical data demonstrating an anti-cancer effect against a broad category of cancer. So I think our National Cancer Institute ought to immediately initiate randomized trials using both ivermectin and mebendazole as adjunctive treatment in cancer.
That's staggering information. And I think none of us have escaped in our families cancer. Somebody in all of our families has been has suffered, either beat it or succumbed to it. What can we do? What can the Flashpoint Army do that are watching you? How can we help push? Can we put pressure on anybody to help this, other than going to twc.health and getting it for ourselves? But what can we do to help this whole situation here, get this out in the public more?
Well, Flashpoint Army is powerful. It's probably not a more galvanized group in the country. Go to the wellness company, sign up for a membership, at least get the frequent newsletters.